Part 1. Has ChatGPT quietly become infrastructure? Hey, remember when ChatGPT went down the other day?
Yeah,
I was way more annoyed than I expected. It's not like I couldn't work. I was just bored.
bored?
I caught myself opening ChatGPT like 3 times to look things up.
That sounds suspiciously like addiction.
No. The weird thing is that these days, I open ChatGPT before Google.
Honestly, I kind of get that.
Oh, and I went to the barber recently.
That's a rare event.
Hey. Anyway, I was talking with my barber, and he was using ChatGPT all the time.
Really?
Not only that, he knew more about it than I did.
That has to sting a little.
It feels like AI suddenly became mainstream.
The numbers say the same thing. OpenAI recently reported that it has over 900 million weekly users worldwide.
That number sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud.
And that's not all. Recent reports suggest the ChatGPT app alone reached nearly 1 billion monthly users at record speed.
That's social media territory.
It's getting pretty close.
No wonder my barber uses it.
That's your benchmark?
Absolutely. If my parents know it, what? And my barber knows it. It's officially mainstream.
Strangely enough, that logic works. What's even more impressive is revenue. OpenAI is now generating revenue at roughly $20 billion annually.
Wasn't it around $3 to $4 billion just a couple years ago?
Around that range. Growing more than 5-fold in such a short time is extraordinary.
If my investments grew that fast,
Here we go again.
I'd be walking my dog 7 days a week.
You could already do that. Anthropic has been growing incredibly fast too.
I've definitely been hearing about Claude a lot more lately, especially from programmer friends.
Exactly. Anthropic's valuation has exploded, and the company is preparing for an IPO.
The AI industry changes every week.
Honestly, sometimes every day.
Haven't they already won?
Why do you think that?
Huge user base, huge revenue, huge brand recognition. I'd be celebrating for a week.
And probably bankrupt by the second week.
Fair point.
But that's exactly why things are getting interesting. Recently, both OpenAI and Anthropic have been talking more about IPOs, investors, and profitability.
I've noticed that. Feels like AI news used to be about intelligence. Now it's about money.
OpenAI is growing at an incredible pace.
Yet profitability is still considered a future goal.
Even with $20 billion in revenue?
Yes, because investors are starting to ask a different question. Not how many users do you have,
But can this business actually make money? A few years ago, the discussion was,
which AI is smartest? Today, it's becoming, which AI can generate sustainable profits?
Interesting. So, the next question is obvious. How exactly do these companies make money?
Exactly, and that's where the real story begins.
Part 2. Why are AI companies suddenly chasing profits? But I'm still not convinced.
About what?
Over 900 million users. $20 billion in revenue. That sounds like a victory lap to me.
Funny enough, investors used to think the same thing.
Used to?
Recently, the conversation changed. People aren't talking about performance anymore. They're talking about costs.
Wow. That got boring really fast.
Actually, that's where things get interesting. Every time you ask ChatGPT a question, a GPU has to do work. Now multiply that by hundreds of millions of people.
Suddenly, I feel guilty.
Don't.
Yesterday, I asked ChatGPT what to eat for dinner.
You'll survive.
Then, I uploaded dog photos.
Still acceptable.
Good.
But seriously, investors are starting to care less about user counts and more about whether those users generate profit.
Makes sense. Feels like graduating from school and entering the real world.
That's actually a pretty good comparison.
Even with all that revenue?
Yes, which is why AI news has shifted. Now you hear about profits, IPOs, fundraising, operating costs.
You're right. It feels less like tech news, and more like Wall Street news.
Because the amount of money involved has become enormous. A lot more. Anthropic filed first. OpenAI followed shortly after.
AI companies grew up fast.
A few years ago, they felt more like research labs.
Exactly. I pictured scientists writing equations on glass walls.
You've watched too many movies.
Probably. What?
Recent AI infrastructure projects tied to Anthropic involve investments worth tens of billions of dollars.
Wait, billions? For AI?
Yes,
Sometimes AI news sounds more like construction industry news.
exactly. Data centers, power generation, networking, massive hardware deployments. The scale is completely different now.
So that's why everyone suddenly cares about profits.
Right. The challenge is no longer just building AI. Now it's figuring out how to pay for all of it.
You know, I think I'm starting to see the industry differently.
Good, because next we're going to talk about something even more interesting.
What's that?
If AI companies are spending all this money,
Who's actually making the most money from the AI boom?
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
you probably do.
Part 3. The biggest winners of the AI boom. Okay, if OpenAI and Anthropic are spending all this money, who's actually making the money?
Now we're asking the fun question.
I knew it. This is where NVIDIA shows up.
Of course,
At this point, NVIDIA appears in every AI conversation.
for good reason.
Honestly, if aliens landed tomorrow, NVIDIA would somehow be involved.
That's not completely impossible anymore. Every company wants AI. To build AI, they need GPUs, and NVIDIA dominates that market.
So everybody is fighting over AI. And NVIDIA sells the shovels.
Exactly.
The classic gold rush story.
That's why NVIDIA's growth has been extraordinary. The company became one of the most valuable businesses in the world in just a few years.
Sometimes I forget, NVIDIA used to be known mostly for gaming.
A lot of people do.
Imagine explaining that timeline to someone in 2015.
They'd think you're making it up.
TSMC.
Exactly.
Every cutting-edge AI chip eventually has to be manufactured somewhere.
And that somewhere is often TSMC.
Which is funny. Most people know ChatGPT. Far fewer know TSMC.
Yet TSMC may be just as important to the AI ecosystem.
That's kind of crazy.
The most important companies aren't always the most famous.
Case closed?
Not quite. There's another area getting a lot of attention.
What's that?
Memory.
Memory? That sounds way less exciting.
Until you realize modern AI systems can't function efficiently without it.
Okay. Now you have my attention.
Specifically, HBM, high bandwidth memory. It's become one of the most important components in AI servers.
So, GPUs get the headlines, but memory is quietly becoming essential
Exactly.
because everybody suddenly needs more memory.
Not just more, much faster memory, much more advanced memory.
It's funny. We started this video talking about AI companies. Now we're deep into semiconductors.
And that's actually the point. AI isn't just software anymore. It's becoming an entire industrial ecosystem.
You know, the more we talk about this, the less it feels like a tech trend, and the more it feels like a massive economic shift.
That's exactly how I see it.
And once you start thinking that way,
A much bigger question appears.
What's that?
If AI companies are becoming this important, what do they eventually become?
Now that's an interesting question. Part 4. Can AI companies become the next Google? You know, this video ended up having way more semiconductor talk than I expected.
That's true.
We started with OpenAI and Anthropic, then somehow ended up talking about GPUs, memory chips, and power grids.
And honestly, that's exactly what makes this story interesting.
How so?
Because AI companies aren't behaving like traditional software companies anymore. They're becoming something much bigger.
I think that's what surprised me most. When I hear tech company, I imagine engineers and code, not power plants and billion-dollar infrastructure projects.
Neither did most people 5 years ago. Actually, I think the opposite.
Really?
Up until now, the goal was simple. Build the smartest AI. That's hard. But what comes next is even harder.
Which is?
Build the smartest AI. Generate profits. Keep investors happy. Continue spending billions on infrastructure. And somehow do all of that at the same time.
That sounds brutal.
Exactly. That's why I don't see IPOs as the finish line. I see them as the moment the real competition begins.
Like moving from college sports to the professional leagues.
That's actually a perfect comparison.
So the hard part starts after success.
In many cases, yes.
10 years from now, do you think OpenAI wins?
Honestly, I have no idea.
That's not a very exciting prediction.
Because history keeps surprising people. 20 years ago, most people didn't realize how dominant Google would become. 10 years ago, very few expected Nvidia to become one of the world's most valuable companies. And I think we're making the same mistake today.
Meaning?
Everybody is focused on today's leaders, but the company that matters most in 10 years may not even be the one we're talking about today.
That's fair.
But there is one thing I'm pretty confident about.
What's that?
I don't think AI companies suddenly became obsessed with money. I think AI itself became far bigger than anyone expected. That's why profits matter now. That's why IPOs matter now. That's why semiconductors matter. That's why power infrastructure matters. This isn't a story about AI companies getting greedy. It's a story about AI entering a completely different stage of development.
You know. When we started this video, I thought it was about IPOs. Now it feels like we were talking about the future of an entire industry.
I think that's the real story.
And you still think this is only the beginning?
I do. My guess is that 10 years from now, people will look back at 2025 and 2026 and say, that was just the start.
That's a bold prediction.
Maybe. If I'm wrong, just forget I said it.
Convenient.
That's how future predictions work.
Fair enough.
See you next time.
Thanks for watching today's video. See you next time.